This episode of Gather and Go is brought to you by Huntsville, Alabama. This city delivers with no filler or fluff. It has a bold local art culture, a standout food scene, and immersive experiences you can't find anywhere else. Whether it's a retreat, reunion, or something in between, Huntsville gives you the tools to craft a trip that's intentional, original, and out of this world. Visit huntsville.org to see what you've been missing. Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to Gather and Go, the podcast that helps you plan, promote, and lead better trips. I'm Brian Jewell. I am your host, and I am really glad to have you joining us today. And as always, our promise to you is that we're going to do everything we can to make this investment of your time worth your while. Well, it's National Travel and Tourism Week here in the U.S. Perhaps even more importantly, though, it is Mother's Day week here in the U.S. If you have not made a plan to treat your mom or the mom of your kids, then by all means, get on that right now. And hey, if you're a mom, happy Mother's Day from all of us here at Gather and Go and the Group Travel Leader. Well, in honor of both of these celebrations, I have a really cool featured conversation for you today. I'm going to introduce you to Lorna Holland, who is a tour director and the co-owner of not one, but two tour companies, TourDCWithUs and VaFeltre Tours. Lorna and I are going to talk about how she went from being a tour director to owning tour companies. She's going to share the economics of small group travel with us and give us her perspective on how she maintains a healthy family life as a mom and a tourism entrepreneur. I'm really excited for you to hear this. First, though, let's get into some travel news you may have missed. Los Angeles is considering a minimum wage increase for tourism workers. A Los Angeles City Council committee this week heard a proposed amendment to its living wage ordinances that would raise the minimum wage for many tourism and hospitality workers to $30 per hour by 2028. Nicknamed the Olympic Wage Ordinance, the proposed regulation would incrementally raise wages of airport workers, as well as employees of hotels with more than 60 rooms, to coincide with the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. If the amendment passes, the initial wage increase on July 1st of this year would boost hourly pay to $22.50. Labor unions supporting the measure say it's necessary because inflation has made it difficult for many frontline hospitality workers to afford the cost of living in Southern California, one of the country's most expensive areas. Hotel owners and area business leaders, however, say the amendment could lead to a nearly 70% increase in operating costs. They point to a recent analysis from Oxford Economics that suggests the amendment could lead to a loss of 14,000 hotel jobs and cost $169 million in lost state and local tax revenue. The debate comes as Los Angeles struggles to recover from recent wildfires, as well as the lasting effects of the pandemic, with citywide room occupancy figures about 6% below 2019 levels. Well, now it's time for the road tip segment of our show. This is the part of every episode where we reach deep into our bag of travel knowledge from decades on the road and bring you tips to help make your next trip less stressful and more successful. Well, as we mentioned, it is Mother's Day week here in the U.S. And in our featured conversation, we're going to talk some about what it's like to be a working mother in the travel business. Now, I am obviously not a mother, but I am a father. I have two kids, a daughter named Daisy and a son named Liam. And when I travel, as I frequently do for work, I have to put forth a real effort to stay connected to the kids and to my wife, Laura, as well. And so I thought I'd share just a few of the things that I do in case maybe they would help you out. So the first thing I do every morning when I'm on the road, as soon as I wake up, is I send a hello, good morning message to my wife for her to share with the kids. Now, because my kids are, in that elementary school age range, I try to do something funny and goofy. It may be a Photo of me with bedhead. Maybe I'm standing outside on the balcony, showing them the view from the hotel window. A lot of times I'm making a funny face. That's a great way to set the tone for the day and just remind them that I am thinking of them, even though I'm far away. These days, a lot of times the kids will send the photo back, kind of recreating the photo I took, maybe making some funny faces of their own. And I get a kick out of that. Another thing I always try to make a habit to do is send photos or videos throughout the day, showing them interesting places that I have been or things that I have done. I don't want them to feel like I'm in my own world when I travel, that I'm disconnected from them when I travel. I want them to feel like this is something that's part of our family life, and I want to share as much of the experience with them as I can. It gives them a window into my world on the road, and again, reminds them that I'm thinking of them in everything I do when I travel. Now, one thing that is not negotiable for me during a day on the road is I will absolutely take time during the afternoon or evening to FaceTime the family at home. I have broken away from fam tour groups to do this. I have stepped out of conference meetings to do this. I've done it on the back of a motor coach, in a hotel room, in a restaurant parking lot. This is an essential time for me to connect with the family, to see what they're up to. Very often we try to do it while the family's eating dinner so that I can at least spend a few minutes of the dinner time hour with them, even though I'm not actually with them. Another thing I do during that time is if I'm traveling with people they know, one of my coworkers from here at the group travel leader, or occasionally somebody else, then I will let them say hi to that person. Just lean over, give them a wave, say hello. It helps, again, connect them to my work. It helps them to know who I'm with and to have a better sense of what I'm doing, and for them to feel like they have a small little bit of participation in that. Another thing I do is to try to bring them into the world of my trips by pointing out anytime I am going someplace they know, or especially a place they have been before. I'm fortunate that my kids have been able to travel with me a fair amount, and certainly the older they get, the more they recognize landmarks like Times Square or the Golden Gate Bridge or the Great Wall of China, things like that. Anytime I'm in a place that they know, I'm going to send them that picture of me there, but I may also just send a text or message saying, hey, you remember that airport restaurant we ate at when we were on a layover in Atlanta a couple years ago? Well, I'm back in that same restaurant right now. Or I'm back on that wildlife safari that we did a few years ago together. Or I'm driving through Tennessee. Do you remember that time that we stayed overnight at that hotel in Nashville? All these little things just help them to visualize where I am and what I'm doing. And again, just make them feel a little bit more connected to my life on the road. Now, after I get home, there are still some things that I try to do to make my family feel like they have a part in my travel life, and to make sure that the next time I travel, it doesn't create a feeling of separation or anxiety or a grudge or bitterness or anything like that. Perhaps the very most important thing that I try to do when I am home is to be as present as possible. And look, I know this is a challenge for every parent, whether you travel for work or not. This is difficult. You've got 1,000 things on your mind. You've got work to do. You've got home chores to take care of, laundry to fold, dinner to make. And there's always the constant draw of your cell phone notifications trying to drag you away from your family. Well, I feel like the fact that I do have to travel once every month or two really puts the onus on me to be fully home when I'm home. So I try to give an extra effort into putting my phone away, not being drawn into all the distractions of life. And when I do have to do chores, I try to have the kids do chores with me. This is beneficial in a whole bunch of ways. And then, of course, the biggest benefit is whenever possible, I try to load them up and bring them with me. Now, this obviously doesn't work at every age on every trip, but I've been really fortunate to be able to bring the family with me to conferences, along on some events. They've actually been with me on some family-focused travel familiarization events. And as you can imagine, it's such an enriching experience for the kids. It makes them feel really bought in to my career. It makes them excited about travel, and it gives us those opportunities to discuss those memories again and again in the future. That is the road tip of the week. Well, now before we move on, I want to take just a minute and share a little bit of news from us. Now, hopefully you have heard me talk before about our on-site familiarization program. These are fam tours we do in partnership with destinations around the country and sometimes around the world to bring travel planners like you to see these places and experience them firsthand so that you have a more direct experience for planning your own group trips to those places. Now, we have a great fam trip to Kentucky coming up at the end of this month, and we have recently had just a handful of spots open up on that trip. And I want to tell you about them so that you have a chance to join us for this really fantastic experience. The trip is May 26th through 30th. Yes, it starts on Memorial Day weekend, but I promise we're going to make it worth your while to travel over that holiday weekend. This trip is going to go to Louisville, Lexington, and some of the cities in northern Kentucky along the Ohio River. Some of the highlights are going to include a really cool river cruise experience with BB riverboats. You're going to visit a horse farm and learn all about Kentucky's thoroughbred horse industry. There's going to be a chance to visit the Fraser History Museum in Louisville and a really excellent night at the races at Churchill Downs. So if you're free the week of May 26th through 30th and interested in attending this fam, you can learn more and get your name in the running by reaching out to Kyle Anderson on our team. Now, you can call Kyle at 859-334-1718 or email him at kyle@grouptravelleader.com. Whatever you do this as soon as you can because we only have a few spots. They're going to go fast. So reach out to Kyle, and we can't wait to have you join us for a great experience in Kentucky at the end of this month. Well, it's just about time for us to get into our featured conversation with Lorna Holland. As we do that, let me remind you, I'm going to be taking notes of some of the most important things Lorna had to say. You can find those in the show notes for this episode. That's the text right below the audio player, wherever you're listening. You can also find those on our website at grouptravelleader.com/podcast. And after the interview, I'm also going to come back and cover some of the highlights of what Lorna had to say to make sure you don't miss some of the really insightful ideas she shared. And let me encourage you to stick around to the end of that wrap up, because once we're done with that, I'm going to take a minute and explain why I don't want elite travel status. That's going to be the topic of today's Hot Minute. You won't want to miss that. We'll be right back with Lorna Holland. All right, everybody, I want to take a moment to tell you more about our partner, Huntsville, Alabama. Huntsville goes beyond the usual, offering rich, memorable experiences for group itineraries that aim higher. Start at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, where groups can explore the Saturn V rocket, handle real space artifacts, or try a mission simulation. Creativity shines at Low Mill Arts and Entertainment, a vibrant hub where visitors meet artists and join hands-on workshops. If you prefer something more curated, the Huntsville Museum of Art delivers impactful exhibitions. For a quirky twist, don't miss Signal's Museum of Information Explosion. When evening comes, dine at Cotton Row or Fat Sammy's, then enjoy rooftop drinks at Stella's or 106 Jefferson. Wrap it all up with live music under the stars at the Orion Amphitheater. Huntsville blends inspiration, immersion, and just enough surprise. Visit huntsville.org and discover a whole new world of possibilities. All right, everybody, my guest today is a veteran tour director who has leveraged her experience guiding trips to create her own tour companies. After decades leading student groups on trips in the U.S. and abroad, she and her husband launched TourDCWithUs and VaFeltre Tours, taking groups of all ages on trips throughout the U.S., Italy, and other European destinations. Lorna Holland, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to have you here. Your life is fascinating to me. I've always been fascinated by the lives of tour directors because, you know, so many people, I'm sure you've met people your whole life who say, oh, you have the most amazing job. So that's fascinating. And then I'm fascinated by tourism entrepreneurs. So we have a lot to talk about. Do you get that question a lot? You have the most amazing job in the world?
Yes. Actually, when I became a tour director, I wrote out an email saying to everybody, oh my gosh, I finally found my career. Everybody should be a tour guide. And then I very quickly realized that not everybody should be a tour guide.
It's not for everybody, but if it's for you, wow, what a way to earn a living. It's pretty incredible. Tell us your story. How did you find your way into tourism?
So I went to college at Old Dominion University down in Norfolk, Virginia, and I was working at Starbucks. And this guy used to come into my Starbucks and kind of set up office. So, he'd come in, have his laptop and 5,000 papers, come in for a few days, leave. Come in for a few days, come back a week or so later, come in for a day or two, leave again. And after 6, 8 months, a year, I was like, how do I know your drink and I know who you are, but you're not actually a regular?
Yeah.
And he's like, you know what? I'm a tour director. You should think about doing this. And I was like, I'm getting a marketing degree. That's not a real job. I can't do this. So he came back with this packet, like this whole packet of papers. And it talked about a tour school in California. And at the time, I was getting ready to pack up and go back to Australia. I'd been an exchange student in Australia. I had always said I was going to go back. And so I did. I got rid of all my stuff. I packed up most of my stuff and either sold it, took it to my mom's, whatever. And I went to Australia. I came back and couldn't get a job right away. So I ended up managing a different coffee shop in Northern Virginia. And a different gentleman came in and he's like, you're not supposed to be here. We need to find you a job. Wow. And I was like, okay. So he comes back 2 days later. He goes, do you know there's a tour school in California? And
You're
I was
kidding
like,
me.
That's what that guy was talking about. And I had put everything either in storage or in boxes or whatever. And the one thing that I had never put away was the envelope from the guy. And it was in my drawer next to my bed. And so I went into it and it was all this information about ITMI, the International Tour Management Institute in California. So I'm a certified tour director. Yeah. So I did that. And, they sell you this dream that you're going to take over the world as a tour guide. And when I led my first tour, I was like, oh, I did that. And then when I started leading the tours in Europe, I was like, I'm doing it. And then one day my teacher from ITMI actually needed to train with me on a tour. And I was like, that's it. I've come full circle. But my first year leading tours, I was in the National Cathedral and I saw a gentleman all the way at the end of the cathedral. And I was like, there's no way. And I ran up to him and I was like, Daryl. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, Daryl, do you know who I am? And he goes, yeah. And I go, do you know why I'm here? And he kind of looked at me and I go, I'm here because of you.
Wow.
I listened to you and I went to ITMI and I'm a tour director too. So.
That is incredible. I mean, what are the chances that two different tourism professionals would find you in two different coffee shops and basically tell you you're made for this?
Yeah, I figured that was probably my sign. I was willing to listen at that point.
Listen, whatever you believe about higher powers, if it's the universe telling you, if it's the voice of God, it was something.
Right.
It was something. That is absolutely incredible. So obviously you enjoyed the work. How long did it take for you to go from like, okay, this is cool to like, yeah, this is it for me. This is my career.
3 hours, maybe 4. No, actually, my very first tour was very difficult. And I had all of that trepidation and nervousness, even when I finished the tour. My first tour, they interviewed me at ITMI. There were about 6 or 8 of us who got interviewed right away. I was sent to Florida in the middle of 3 hurricanes, Charlie, Ivan, and Jean.
Wow.
And part of my itinerary was wiped out. My colleague who was working alongside me had a different hotel. His hotel was washed out to sea. So I'm just like, well, I don't really know if this is for me. But then when I got on my first student tour, I knew that I was good. I was fine.
Okay. So after a long time of freelance tour guiding, tour directing, you're working for a bunch of different companies.
Yeah.
You saw an opportunity to branch out and together with your husband, start your own company, your own couple of tourism brands. What was the inspiration for that?
So I had a teacher friend who said, "You've been doing this for years. You've been leading trips. Would you be willing to lead a trip for our school? Would you want to be our tour operator?" And Dante and I sat down and had a frank conversation with each other. Can we do this? Do we know what it takes to run the tour? Do we know what it takes to book the tour? And we decided that we did. So I think having somebody who believed in us helped us believe in ourselves. And the skills that we already had really just kind of had to branch out to create the booking process and work with the parents and work with the teachers, the outside kind of cogs of the wheel that we'd never really had to deal with before. But it was a pretty natural transition.
I want to ask about the role that your, collaborative relationship with your husband played. Do you think if you didn't have Dante there, working alongside you, that you would have said, "Yeah, sure, I'll be your tour operator," or was that support a pretty critical thing for you?
I think I might have taken that one school, but I don't know that I would have grown into an entire company. Dante and I both have our degrees, but we have degrees in different subjects, and they mesh exactly where they need to. So I have the marketing degree, I have the business degree. I do the sales side, I do the numbers, I write up the logistics of the tour. But then if you go on the website, Dante's the one who does our videos. He's the one who does our marketing online. He's the one who designed the website. I go through and make sure that the English is straight, but he goes through to, pick the graphics and make all the little images I don't know how to do any of that kind of stuff. So I think that both of us came with the skills necessary to really put it together. He deals with the registration system. I mean, I can go in and I can edit somebody's payment, but setting it up from the very beginning, we both kind of came in with those backgrounds that were necessary. So we're definitely a team.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You mentioned, there are different skills involved in planning trips, working with vendors, accepting payments. All the administration is very different than, being on the motor coach, leading a group, making sure they have a good time. What were some of those skills that you had to learn early on? Maybe that you knew you were going to have to, or maybe some that surprised you that you were going to have to pick up when you started doing your own tours?
I think one of the biggest headaches that come with booking tours is the whole component of booking hotels. I had this great conversation with one of my hotel sales ladies in January. We spoke for probably an entire hour, booked the groups, talked about what we needed, talked about the upgrades in her properties, talked about sales in general, how things were going. I think we learned the names of our kids, hung up the phone. And then I spent the next 3 weeks writing to her going, "Where's my contract?"
Oh.
And so it's like, everything's fine. She calls me back. "Oh, of course I have your rooms. The contract's fine, whatever." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you have to send it to me." And we have it's not her. There are other properties. We call these people. We're like, "Hey, we'd like to pay you." "Oh, sure. Let me send you a credit card authorization form." 10 days later, "Can I have the form?" Like, I spend more time tracking down hotels than I do leading the actual tour. So that's part of it, is learning how far out you have to book things and the lead time that it takes to get something that you think is so easy accomplished. And then kind of the nuances. You might have one restaurant who wants you to "Can you send me a list of the 8 groups that you have that want to eat with us this spring?" And another one who says, "I want 1 email per school." So you kind of have to learn the nuances of each of the sales agents you're dealing with.
Yeah. So it's really, you got a dozen relationships or a few dozen relationships you're managing.
A few dozen, yeah.
In destinations all over the world. And you can only automate that so much, right? I mean, a lot of it is still, person to person.
Exactly. And I think something to be careful with is, when somebody says, "Okay, I want a place to eat in Washington, D.C. or anywhere on tour, it doesn't matter. I want a place to eat." You end up kind of pigeonholing yourself in sort of like, okay, Monday is hamburgers, Tuesday's pasta, Wednesday's tacos, whatever. And then you try to think outside the box, and that gets difficult. You don't want to reinvent the wheel, but you don't want to do the same thing over and over again. So that's something to try to keep ahead of.
So you get the student groups going, and then you see this opportunity to serve groups of women, multi-generational groups, all ages groups of women.
Yes.
How did that come about? Tell us about that brand and what you're doing with it.
So that's my VaFeltre brand. So we have a little bit more of TourDC with us in the States and a little bit more of VaFeltre over in Italy. My husband is Italian. I always joke around that he's my souvenir. I brought him through customs. Again, it was one of the teachers on tour with me who asked, would you be able to take my sisters and our adult daughters around Italy? And I was like, I think so. And I said, Dante, can we do this? And he said, we've always said we wanted to. We never quite knew how to do it. Let's go. And they asked me, at first they said, it's okay if you want to sell it out. And, if you offer it to other people, we understand it's a game of numbers and the price will come down. She said, but can you make it just ladies? And I was like, oh, just ladies is a thing. I can do that too. So this was pre-COVID. I was one of the first groups out there doing the ladies only on such a small scale. So that's where my ladies only Italy tours came from. And little by little, I'm actually expanding out. So it's not just Italy. I have Austria, Germany, Croatia, Slovenia, Greece, and I'm moving on to Australia and Africa over the next 5 to 7 years as well.
So, obviously the demographics are different between your student product and your ladies only product. How much of the operation is different? How much do you have to plan differently? How different is the experience on the trip when you're working with these really different demographics?
So one of the things that I've found with small group travel, if I have a large group of ladies, then it sort of isn't that different of a dynamic. But when I have a small group, let's say 8 or fewer people, I have definitely found that trying to pre-package the meals. So, okay, we're going to have all lunches and dinners included doesn't work anymore. Restaurants aren't going to give you group rates for that. So then you have one lady who very happily ordered a caprese salad with just tomato, mozzarella, and basil, and somebody else who ordered a steak. And one is sitting there saying, well, why am I paying for the other one? So now I'm trying to find restaurants that will take us with reservations, but in Europe, that will also let us pay separately. And that's not always easy to do. So that, I think, was one of my hardest things to kind of overcome. Trying to find the food is important. And it is absolutely true that you can eat badly in Italy. So I have found the restaurants where I like the food, but the treatment of my customers and being able to pay separately when necessary are the things that I'm looking for that have become my challenge.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Do you find that with the ladies only groups, let me back up. Student tours, like many adult tours, there's some built-in expectations. There's going to be a certain number of included meals. That's part of the value of what we're paying for. And that creates the conflict you were talking about where you go to an included meal and people are wanting things of different values. Do the people on the ladies only tours also bring those expectations with them? Or are they much more flexible about, I don't care whether I pay it up front to your company or whether I pay it as I go. I just want great food.
Yeah. I think that when you're getting down to the small group travel, people start realizing that they're not just paying for quantity, they're paying for quality. So if you want to go to the Sistine Chapel, you can go to the Sistine Chapel with 8 people, or you can go to the Sistine Chapel with 48 people. The ceiling will look the same. If the room is crowded, the room is crowded. It doesn't matter. Right. But your experience for the entire trip is different when you have smaller groups. So I think that the people who are looking for smaller groups understand, I try to be as transparent as possible why I don't include every single meal, why we take the train between Rome and Florence, Florence and the Dolomites, instead of, having a big bus, why we use smaller forms of transportation or even walk, depending on our hotel in the big cities. Because again, you're looking for something where you're trying to economize something smaller, but you're trying to get a bigger experience out of it.
Yeah. Those economies of scale are such a critical part of group travel. When you do smaller groups, the cost is higher, right? How do your customers react to that? Do they understand that they're paying more for the smaller experience? Or, are they comparing you to what they can get from a travel agent who would just sell them into a big retail bus tour?
I get both because I am the tour operator and the tour guide. I have them from the moment of the first email or phone call all the way to them going through security at the airport at the very end of their trip. So I speak to the people who don't sign up for my tours. People who will say, oh, well, I could absolutely do this trip cheaper. I don't need to go through you. I don't see how you could be asking that much money. And I'm like, I just put this together. I mean, I hang up the phone. I'm not saying it to them, but I just put this together. I have absolutely every idea of how much this costs. And I don't think you can do it cheaper on your own. I'm not saying that I'm budget travel, but I'm not getting massively rich off of these. So I think it's hard for people to see some of these brochures that'll say, travel to Europe for $1,900 for 9 days and up. And then when you get to the and up, you realize, oh, that was for a January departure that magically canceled. When you get to August, it's already gone up 4,000. And what's not included? You can't go to Paris and not go to the Eiffel Tower. You can't go to Rome and not go to the Colosseum. You can't go to New York and not go to the Statue of Liberty. Those are included for me because they should be. So it's hard to get people to understand what an all-inclusive package is versus these other tailored piecemeal packages.
Yeah. A lot of operators who have been in the business, say 20 or 30 years, they have a pricing paradigm based on a full motor coach, right? In the US, that might be like 48 passengers, something along that size. And it's profitable if you can sell 40 to 48 of those seats. If it's under 40, well, then maybe we have an issue. With a small group, there's a lot about that paradigm that breaks down that doesn't make sense. So, I heard you mention, well, we take the train or we may do public transportation. Do you have some other sort of hacks or workarounds that you use with those small groups to keep the price from just ballooning, to levels that a customer would find unappealing?
There's not a lot more that I can do because if the group goes too small, they're not even getting group pricing. So maybe a group rate was 16 and a regular rate is 20. They may have to pay that 20 because there were only 6 people on the tour and it takes 10 to make a group rate. So sometimes I can't overcome it. And I think that the big, many people have told me that what Dante and I are selling is not necessarily the tour. We're selling ourselves. And we have to have from that initial click or email or phone call or face on the street, from that moment, they have to realize that they're buying us and not just buying the Sistine Chapel or the Statue of Liberty or the Washington Monument.
Yeah, that's so insightful. Do you ever think about if your calendar is full, if everybody wants you, if you are part of the product, how do you scale that? Or is it something you even want to scale? Or do you say, you know what, we're really happy doing, X number of tours a year, and that's a sustainable lifestyle for us, and we're just going to enjoy life this way?
So in other words, what you're asking is to find out one of our marriage arguments, because Dante's like, we're going to be bigger, better than before. And I'm like, no, we're not. So, and I take arguments. I don't really mean arguments, but
sure.
It has been one of our debates. How big do we want to be? We have friends who have taken tour companies and they have over 100 tours a year, and they have, offices and staff, and they're working now 365 days a year. I don't want to work 365 days a year. I joke around that we're semi-retired because we don't work the entire year. So in order to keep that kind of lifestyle, in order to have, I just had an entire month off to sit and do things in the office, but go hiking when I want to, have a coffee when I want to have that kind of lifestyle, you can't grow but so large. So it's a matter of figuring out, okay, we need to make this bundle of money to pay our bills every year and survive in the lifestyle that we have become accustomed to. How many passengers do we have to have, whether it's in the school groups, in the ladies group? What do we need to do to come up with this pile of money without ruining our way of life? So it's been a delicate balance. Definitely an economy of scale matters. So, having a 3 or 4 bus move in the United States with the students will pay me more than working for another tour operator for 3 or 4 days. But how much do I want to be away from home? I have a daughter. I have a husband. He has a wife. He has a daughter. It's always a question.
That's something that resonates with me a lot. We have children of a similar age, and I think very often about how much I'm on the road and whether I'm being the kind of father I want to be. And, I think I am, I hope I am, but it's always tough when I'm packing on a Saturday night and my kids are looking at me saying, Dad, do you really have to go this time? What are some ways that you and Dante have figured out to have the quality family life you want to have, be the parents and spouses you want to have, but also be tourism entrepreneurs?
So one of the things for us has been bringing Arlie on tour with us. In fact, last summer, I actually had a family who said, we're bringing our teenage daughters, bring your daughter along. That was perfect. She never had to be away from mama. She was there the whole time. But that can't happen all the time. When she was little, she was more portable. We used to pay nannies to come and take care of her in the spring, which is our busiest time of year. And I would have the nanny come, especially when she was tiny, I would have the nanny come and spend the night in the hotel with me. I was usually downtown DC, 6-8 miles away from the house, but I couldn't go home at night because I had a group. So the easy thing, bring the baby to me. I don't have to go to baby. Baby sees me every day. She gets to come down to breakfast. If I finish early, she gets to see me. She can come to the museum. She can come to Mount Vernon. It was great. Then school hits. Now you can't just pick her up and move her whenever you want to anymore. So in the fall, for example, I had a tour where one of my ladies' tours, we were in Florence. We came up here to the Dolomites. We went to Venice. And the way the days worked out, Dante picked up Arlie at noon. They went down, they caught the 2:00 train, came down to Florence for the weekend, hung out with me, and then came back for the week. We came up to the Dolomites. They came and hung out with me. And the next weekend hit, they came to Venice with me. So it lets her kind of have some of that travel lifestyle as well. And hopefully keeps us from being separate for too long.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you figured out a way. It's non-traditional. There wasn't a playbook. It wasn't like, well, I'll just do what my mom did, right? But you figured out a way. What would you say to other young women, young parents, people who are tour directors, or who say, well, maybe could I own my own company one day? What would you encourage them about figuring out the future they want to have in spite of the hurdles in their way?
Yeah, it's actually something that I've thought about with some of the kind of guide meetups or conventions that I go to, that there's never a talk about pregnant moms or families. It could be the man, it could be the woman, it doesn't matter. But whoever the tour guide is, support for our tour guide families. When I got pregnant in 2014, I don't think we had a pregnant tour guide in DC in at least a dozen years. And right after, we had about 3 or 4 more. And now there's kind of been a fall off. Some of the men have actually, their spouses have had children. So there are a few young parents, but I was sort of the first. Yeah. It's difficult because we feel, you said it yourself, like we feel that guilt from the separation. So we have the flexibility of being able to kind of pick where we are. So if I'm leading more tours in the States, I try to have her in the States with me. If I'm leading tours in Italy, I try to have her in Italy with me. Then at least we don't feel like we're quite so far away. Yeah. And the two of us have the ability to, Dante's about to go on tour for a month. He'll come back. I'll go on tour for a month. So one of us is always home. So she has kind of the stability of her school life that way. One of the things that I really took to heart when I was pregnant and I was thinking about how I'm going to leave this baby, I came across the blogs from combat moms. And these women, these women talking about having to go overseas. This is 2014. So there were women being sent to the Middle East in the middle of bombings and everything. And, not knowing when they say goodbye to their family, if they're coming back to their family in one piece or as the same person. And it really gave me perspective that if women like that could go and defend our country, I can go on a tour and figure out how to still be a mom.
Wow. Great perspective. It's hard to put it in better relief than that. Lorna, what's the best way for people to learn more about you, your companies, connect with you, follow what you do?
Dante, of course, has created a YouTube channel for us. So we have lots of videos on there. He's been taking this semi-retired time on the computer, making a whole lot of videos. We have Instagram, Facebook. I'm old, so I'm on the Facebook. And of course, we have our website. You can call me anytime. I love to talk, as you can see. So there's several ways to get in touch with us. Phone call, email, Facebook, Instagram. Whatever medium works for you, it works for us as well.
Yeah. And you guys are available for preformed groups that want custom tours, right? They can reach out to you.
Absolutely. It's slightly easier for me because I don't have people coming from all different destinations. I know that everybody is going to touch ground at the same time and everybody's going to get on the same airport or same airplane and leave. So I love preformed groups. It's just a little bit less work for me. But absolutely, I love putting the trips together and getting to know my people along the way.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, before I let you go, we have some questions we ask everybody, and these are just for fun, so no pressure. Just answer off the top of your head. When you book travel, are you booking a window seat or an aisle seat?
I'm a window.
Yeah.
Although I'm not allowed to anymore because now Dante and Arlie fight over the window, so I just get on the plane. But when it's just me, I'm a window.
Yeah, it's funny when it's me with the family. Laura says, "Okay, you put yourself in the row of 3 with the 2 kids. I'll be across the aisle from you,
yes,
doing my own thing."
Smart woman.
Yeah, she is. So, what's one thing in your carry-on you wouldn't travel without?
I'm assuming money and phone are in my pocket, so something else.
Yeah,
something I wouldn't travel without. Money, phone, and keys. I'll go out and just do a tour with that. What else in my backpack? I guess a pen?
That's a great tip because there are so many times where it would be helpful to have a pen. And if you haven't packed one, I mean, I see people all the time, on international flights, it's time to fill out the form. And they're like, well, I don't have a, stewardess, can I have a pen?
Yeah.
Yeah, very common. If you had a free airline pass and a week with nothing else to do, where would you be headed next?
Can I have just barely more than a week?
Yeah, you can have 2 if you want.
I've been itching for just some place with just blue water, which granted, I go to the Amalfi Coast, so that's okay. But I want to go somewhere different. So,
Yeah.
I just have this image of like Tahiti with the huts over the water. So I think I would go there.
Not a bad choice at all. Last question. What's one thing you have seen or done on the road that you wish you could go back and experience again with somebody you love?
They go on tour with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't been to Amalfi with me. I think that's something I would love to have them come down. And Capri, I think, is one of the most magical places in the entire world. If there are mermaids, they definitely have swum around that island.
Wow.
I think, I would like Arlie to come. I would love both of them to come with me to Capri and go on the chairlift that goes from Anna Capri up to Monte Solare. Where I always, whatever group I have, we always toast my mom when we go up there because it's her favorite place in the whole world. And she's probably not going to make it back there. So I think, the chairlift of Monte Solare and going up to the top of Capri.
Yeah. Wow. Well, listen, one of these semi-retired months that you all have, maybe you just need to plan a little family trip and make it happen. That sounds
but it's a great
wonderful.
day. It's February. I have the wrong month off.
Yeah. We'll put it on the bucket list. Sooner or later, you'll make it happen, I'm sure. Awesome. Well, Lorna, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Well, I sure hope you enjoyed that conversation with Lorna. I know I sure did, and I hope you took a lot away from it. I want to remind you, you can see the entire conversation and even catch a couple things I wasn't able to include here on the podcast when you watch on our YouTube channel. That's right. You can go to YouTube and search for Gather and Go, or simply find the episode page on our website, grouptravelleader.com/podcast. And there you can see the entire conversation between me and Lorna in video. That's definitely going to be worth your while. Now, before we move on, I want to take a minute and hit just a few of the highlights of things Lorna said that I thought were really insightful, because I want to make sure you don't miss them. Now, when I asked Lorna about the motivation and inspiration for going from being a tour director to launching her own tour company, she said, having somebody who believed in us helped us believe in ourselves. The skills we already had, we really just had to branch out to create the booking process and work with the parents and work with the teachers. But it was a pretty natural transition. I love this point of view for a bunch of reasons. Number one, I think Lorna's making a great point that you may already have the skills you need to launch out into something bigger than you're already doing. If you are a tour director, you may already have the skills you need to launch your own brand. If you are a volunteer or a part-time group leader, you probably already have the skills you need to build something bigger. So if you have ever thought of it, if you have ever dreamed of it, if you have ever wondered, hey, what if I could be a tourism entrepreneur? I hope you'll take encouragement from these words. I love what she said about having someone who believed in her, helped her believe in herself. Well, let me tell you what, if you're already doing this work, I believe in you. Maybe that's not enough to get you going, but perhaps it's enough to go find someone else who believes in you as well. Tell them about your dreams and let them help motivate you to turn those dreams into reality. Now, when we were talking about the different expectations people have in different sizes and kinds of group tours, Lorna said, when you get down to the small group travel, people start realizing that they're not just paying for quantity, they're paying for quality. You can go to the Sistine Chapel with 8 or 48 people. The ceiling will look the same, but your experience for the entire trip is different when you have smaller groups. She went on to say, many people have told me that what Dante and I are selling is not the tour. We're selling ourselves. And from that initial click or email or phone call or face on the street, from that moment, they have to realize that they're buying us and not just buying the Sistine Chapel or the Statue of Liberty. This is such an insightful thought. Small group travel is different than large group travel. Of course, it's different in the intimacy of the experience. It's different in the logistics of the experience. But one of the things that is most different is that when you take a small group out, you are giving people more access to you. Or if you run a company with multiple tour directors and guides, you're giving them greater access to the person leading the trip. And as we all know, the person leading the trip is such a key ingredient to the success of not only that trip, but frankly, your entire company. So if you are the group leader, if you are a solopreneur, if you lead all the trips, it's not just about the destination. It's about you too. People want to be with you. They enjoy being with you. They trust you. They want to travel with you. And you have the privilege of playing that role in their vacation. There's also a lot of responsibility that comes with that. Now, finally, when I asked Lorna what advice she has for other young women or parents in the travel industry, she said, there's never a talk about pregnant moms or families. She said it can be the mom, the dad, whoever, but we need support for our tour guide families. When I got pregnant in 2014, I don't think we had a pregnant tour guide in DC for at least a dozen years. She went on to say, one of the things I took to heart when I was pregnant was the blogs from combat moms. These were women being sent to the Middle East and not knowing when they said goodbye to their families if they're coming back in one piece or as the same person. It really gave me perspective that if a woman like that could go and defend our country, I can go on tour and figure out how to still be a mom. Wow, what a grounded and sobering perspective there from Lorna. Of course, we who work in tourism have the privilege of doing so in part because there are moms and dads and others who have made much greater sacrifices to secure our freedoms. I love the idea that we as an industry can and should do more to support families that are working, parents that are working, find ways to help them stay connected to their kids when they travel, also to help them bring their kids along and be successful parents and partners on the road. Great stuff there from Lorna Holland. Well, if you travel much these days, you have no doubt noticed that there seems to be a loyalty program for every conceivable travel brand under the sun. And many of those loyalty programs have tiered levels where the most frequent travelers get elite status. Of course, with that elite status comes all kinds of benefits and upgrades and special perks that can look awfully tempting from the outside. But you know what? After years and years of traveling and having and not having elite status, I actually don't have it, and I don't even want it anymore. That is the topic of today's Hot Minute. Yeah, that's right. The Hot Minute is the portion of the program where I take 60 seconds to give you my unfiltered thoughts on an issue that impacts tourism every day. And today, in honor of our guest and of Mother's Day, I am going to explain my thoughts as to why I don't want elite status. So let's put 60 seconds on the clock and get into it. I don't have elite status with any travel brand these days, and that's okay with me. Like most people, I feel a twinge of jealousy when I watch others enjoying the perks of elite status, but then I remind myself, if I had that status, it would mean I'm traveling too much. There was a time when I enjoyed silver airline status. I traveled a lot in my 20s. It was all fun. But today, as a husband and a father in my 40s, that amount of travel sounds exhausting and unsustainable. Now, I don't judge anyone who carries a platinum card, and I certainly still love travel. But for me, leaving home these days comes at a much higher cost than it used to. My primary mission in life is to be a great husband and a great dad. So the way I see it, the fact that I'm no longer an elite traveler is a sign that I'm doing those jobs right. Well, that's the Hot Minute. That's how I see things anyway. Of course, as always, you're welcome to disagree with me, and we can still be friends. And hey, whether you agree or disagree, we would love to hear from you. You can send your thoughts, questions, or the things you miss most about being in your 20s to podcast@grouptravelleader.com. I read every message that comes into that address. I love hearing from you. And hey, you never know. Your thoughts or ideas may just be the topic of the next Hot Minute. And while you're in the mood to give us some feedback, would you do me a big favor? Would you go to your favorite podcast playing app? If you haven't already subscribed to the show, do it there now. While you're there, if you could give us that review, leave us a rating, that would be a big help. And I am so thankful to each of you who has done that so far. My thanks as well to Lorna Holland for joining me today. On the next episode, I'm going to bring you a super helpful conversation with Colleen McDaniel of Cruise Critic, who's going to give us an inside look at the booming world of river cruising. You won't want to miss that. Until then, though, remember this. At the end of the day, we're all on this trip together, so let's make it a good one. See you next time on Gather and Go. Gather and Go is hosted and executive produced by me, Brian Jewell. Our publisher is Mac Lacey. Danya Simmons is our creative director. Ashley Ricks is our circulation manager and graphic designer. Our sales team is Kyle Anderson and Talisa Reck. To advertise on the podcast, call Talisa at 859-253-0455. Gather and Go is a production of the Group Travel Leader. For more information about our magazines, podcasts, and events, visit us online at grouptravelleader.com. This episode was brought to you by Huntsville, Alabama, a city that is both cool and convenient. Getting to Huntsville is easy, and staying comfortably busy is even easier. With a walkable downtown, full-service hotels within steps of the city's best attractions, and an airport just 15 minutes from the core, it's a destination that works with you. Whether you're organizing a tour or getting a group together just to explore, you'll find Huntsville offers the support to make your visit stand out without trying too hard. So pack the schedule and max out the agenda. In Huntsville, there's always one more must-hit spot. Visit huntsville.org to see why more and more groups choose to gravitate here.